Good afternoon. I'd like to call this meeting to order, and this is Tuesday, April 22nd, and this is the informational meeting of the Sioux Falls City Council. I'd like to welcome everybody in the audience that's here today. And we're going to start out. Greg isn't here yet, but I know he's on his way. But Dean, should we go ahead and you want to give the report, the update on the audit committee?
Sure, I looked at it for a minute. I can talk about it. They had a meeting last Wednesday, April 16th. A couple items were had. Reports. We had the results of the external audit of the City of Sioux Falls. The only significant thing on here, I don't know if it's significant or not, our CAFR, our Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, wasn't completed. But Dean Bucknenberg, a CPA with Eide Bailey, presented a high-level review of the audit. He said there are no material misstatements noted, no audit entries, no material weaknesses to report, and no significant deficiencies. Bucknenberg said it was as clean of a report as you could hope for, and there was additional discussion. Then there was an audit report on the Convention and Visitors Bureau bid. That was accepted unanimously. Another one on the family daycare registration. That one was accepted unanimously. And a review of the audit report on audit recommendations. There was discussion on that, and an update on peer review, which is significant and recommended, I believe, by Rich Oaksel, our head auditor. Peer review is it's something new for us, but it's something that's necessary. They went into an executive session, and the meeting adjourned at 5:06.
Great. Thank you very much. Thank you. This is an opportunity for city open discussion before we get into the presentations. Is there anything that any of the councilors want to bring before the chair at this time? Yes, Councilor Anderson.
Should like to update the council a little bit on our TIF on the North Cliff property. We've had this sitting for about a year. I've had several meetings with local developers. We have identified a local developer now that is interested in the project. We're in negotiations and discussions with the state on basically getting some tax financing and also the use of the Governor's House program. Those discussions have been very positive, and we're moving forward to get the entire plan set together, dotting our I's, crossing our T's, before there will be an official announcement of the developer and the plan that will happen. What the discussion has been up to this point on that 28.5 acres would be a mixed-use development of single-family homes, 2 and 3 bedroom, converting into like some twin homes, duplexes, and then as we reach the far west end of the project, maybe some efficiency apartments for low income. I feel very positive about the discussions as we're moving forward, and we're looking for even more partners. Like I said, we're looking at maybe up to 50 to 60 single-family homes. These lots could be purchased by other organizations or individuals, and then they can build their own homes in there also. So I think it'll be a great injection in new homes and that in one of our oldest neighborhoods.
Yeah, that was over on that section right there that Don Dunham proposed, that blighted area that we had in that little hills area.
Correct, on North Cliff, yeah. Right there by the
That'd be great
trestle.
if it did come forward. It'd be great.
And
Thanks.
if you're over in that area, if you want to drive up where the steel gate is, they've actually bladed that area, a lot of the property, and you can see all the way over to the Leaders Edition and see how much space is actually there. It's quite interesting.
Cool. Good. Thanks, Kenny. Is there anything else before the council at this time? Councilor Jameson?
I take it you covered the audit committee. Any questions on that? It's pretty exciting stuff, you guys. You should be there. No questions? All right. Well, I want to make sure I had that chance. The other part is a question on the indoor pool vote. Just wondering if the council had any concerns or desires to allow the new council members to vote. The timeline that I saw didn't provide for them to be voting on it, and I've talked to both of them. They seem kind of indifferent to whether they vote or not. But it's just my belief that given the fact that they'll be dealing with the budget for years to come, that they have a vote, but I thought I would just kind of throw it out to the councilors. I don't remember the timeline. I tried to reach Don Kearney. I couldn't reach him, but I don't believe they would have a vote.
Right. Right. Because it's been proposed already, Councilor Jameson, the timeline is going to be the first meeting. It'll come for us for the first reading. I believe the first meeting in May. And then again, I think right after that, it'll come in right before Sue and I go off the council is what the proposed agenda is. And I think that's what we're going to go forward with.
Well, right, that's the
They'd
proposed,
asked us, and I said that, so.
proposed agenda, but it's certainly up to us if we want to defer it. If I thought I'd just open it up for discussion if anybody else felt like I did. That's all.
Good. Yes, Councilor James.
Well,
Kermit.
I guess I kind of agree. Excuse me. I guess I kind of agree with you, Greg, that we ought to allow the new council members to do this. But also there's something else we ought to consider too, and that is there have been so many people asking me, where are we really going to have this at? And what they're inferring is that we shouldn't have it at Spellerberg. We should have it somewhere else in the city. And so I think that's something we should be talking more seriously about. Where are we going to have this? Obviously, the vote was overwhelming against an outdoor pool, and but that didn't necessarily mean that we would have an indoor pool at Spellerberg Park. Maybe we should consider some other possible locations too.
Michelle?
I would just remind council that we've been privy to, and it's public information, a poll that was in addition to the actual polling on election day that shows that 70% of the people that voted against that indoor or against the outdoor pool assumed they were voting for an indoor pool at Spellerberg. I think that for this council or any council to disregard that 70% in favor of an indoor pool at Spellerberg is dangerous waters, if I can use that. Sorry. But I think we need to be very clear. We need to listen to what the citizens are telling us. The citizens support this location. And I would also argue then that this has been this council's project. I would appreciate my colleagues who have been with us along this road for the last 4 years being here to vote on this final vote. You know, the folks that are coming on absolutely have that privilege of voting for the budget, for or against the budget as we go forward. But I just would like the current council that has been on this for this long to be the ones that vote on it. But that's my personal opinion.
Councilor Karski?
I'm going to kind of echo what Michelle was saying, and that it was 70%. I think that was 70% pretty much across all the neighborhoods. And the problem with not building the facility at Spellerberg would be we don't have anything at Spellerberg. And the people in that neighborhood knew that choice. And by not putting an indoor pool there, we wouldn't have an outdoor pool there either, because we can't simply just, you can't do both. And they pretty much plainly said, we don't want an outdoor pool here. So we can't go against that either. So by not putting the indoor pool there, we'd just have a green space there, and that would be it. And I agree with you also, Michelle, that this council has been working on this pool project for years now, and I think it's only fair to the councilors that are here that have worked on it that they get a vote in it too.
Councilor, please.
Yeah, I guess I would say that, the 70% vote, the only thing absolutely 100% clear is that they didn't want an outdoor pool. Now, I'm willing to, agree. The odds are, most citizens did want to have an indoor pool, but I don't know if we can go that far and say they want an indoor pool at Spellerberg Park. There are so many other options available where we could place the indoor pool. And a lot of people, of course, have mentioned, let's have the indoor pool out there at the sports facility, the Sanford Sports Facility, and that would be a good location because, That's where the sporting activity is being centered at.
I might take this opportunity to make a comment. I have been involved with a lot of the discussion over the Spellerberg location and on that indoor pool. Been involved over the years in a number of focus groups and stuff like that. And I do really want to vote on that. The presentation and the timeline was laid out by the administration at the last informational meeting that they had in their presentation. And I think we've got the path charted at this time unless somebody comes up and it gets changed. But it's my intent to move ahead with it as presented by the administration. And I do want the opportunity to vote on it. I think it's a great thing for the city of Sioux Falls. I like the location. A lot of work went into it. We actually hired consultants to review the locations throughout the plan, came up with a master plan, and I just really would like the opportunity to vote on it. I spent a lot of time on the issue. That being said, is there anything else before the council? Okay, what we're going to do is move into our presentation. We're going to start out with the Police Department and the Leads Online program. Lieutenant Terry Mixel. Welcome, Terry.
Good afternoon. I was asked today to come and give you a brief overview of Leads Online, which is our pawn system that we use at the Police Department. A little bit of the history. We used to, back in 2004, we were on the county site. The county supported our pawn system. At that time, we would go out. A detective was assigned to several pawn shops. We would go to the pawn shop, pick up a handwritten card, bring it back to the police department, code it, and then give it to our records section. They would enter that. It was a slow process, to say the least, and we also had issues with handwriting and reading what they actually wrote to us. In 2004, the county, the police department, and Metro Communications moved to a new records management system, New World. At that time, they indicated that we would have a pawn module with that. It never came to light. So in 2009, the police department began looking for a new system to automate our pawn system and get us up to date. In 2009, we contracted with Leads Online, which is a nationwide company. We researched, we found this company. To date, they have 2,900 law enforcement agencies signed up with them. They include some of the bigger ones, New York, Kansas City, Denver, Sioux Falls. They have 30,000 businesses reporting to them at this time, and online they have 650 million transactions. So when we went to Leads Online, we found it very efficient for the police department. Instead of the detectives going out, we could work on our cases. They were getting the information electronically, storing it for us, and giving us access to it, not only Sioux Falls, but everybody who was online. To date, Sioux Falls Police Department detectives have done 12,400 searches through the system, and we have 400, what we call hits, 400 pieces of stolen property that we've identified using the system, and either collected it or resolved it with the person. For instance, if a son took his dad's watch and pawned it, his dad didn't want him prosecuted, we would send them to the pawn shop to resolve that issue. So at this point, it's just an overview. I know there were some questions a couple weeks ago, see if the council was going to revisit it. I know when it was passed many years ago, there was I believe you're going to revisit it. I wasn't up there at the time. But for the police department, we found it very efficient for us and cost effective for what we pay for it.
Are there any questions for the lieutenant? Councilor Staggers?
Yeah, what do we pay for it?
I don't know. That contract was signed before I came up there, and I don't know what we pay for it. Assistant Chief Lyon would probably have that information.
Okay.
We'll get that information, Counselor, and have it sent out.
Okay. Also, can I ask one other quick question? Can you give us some sense if this is a very serious problem in Sioux Falls? Do we have a lot of this going on? People stealing things and taking them to the pawn shops, or not?
We have. It's always going on, but where it becomes hard really to identify, if you look at how many thousands of items get pawned per year, it's more not on the pawn shop's end, but on the person who loses it. If you go out and you put a radio in your car, do you write that serial number down? It's very hard when we get people missing their stereos or anything, their iPods. A lot of times we find that they don't have their serial number. But when they do, it's very effective because we can put that serial number into a nationwide computer, and Leads Online will hit on that if it's pawned anywhere. that is contracted with Leads Online.
So is this a big problem in Sioux Falls?
Every detective gets 1,000 cases a year, and we have 7 of them, 7. So you're looking between 6,000 and 7,000 property crimes reports. It'd be theft, burglary, robbery. So it's a problem. As the city grows, it's going to continue to grow.
Okay, thank you.
So is it an epidemic? No, but it's manageable at this time, but I don't think it's going away anytime
Councilor
soon.
Rippenbach.
You know, I was in on those conversations when we put that into ordinance as part of the deal for how we're dealing with pawn shops, and used bookstores were involved, and it was all sorts of drama that this was Big Brother coming to take over their businesses. How have those relationships really worked out? I thought the drama was probably overrated, but I wonder then in reality how it's working. I mean, 400 hits out of 12,000 searches, is that good? It sounds like not much, but.
I actually think that's pretty good.
Okay.
Again, you take in all factors. People are missing items. They don't have serial numbers. They don't have very good descriptions, especially when you're talking about jewelry. If the pawn shop or the secondhand stores do their job of giving us a good description of the ring, and you give us a good description, we might be able to match that up. Our relationships are, I believe they're very good, but we do have some, one of the persons we deal with is concerned about cyber theft. We had this Heartbleed. Everybody hears about Heartbleed going on. They immediately put out a statement, Leads Online, saying that doesn't affect us. We don't use that type of system. We use different security systems. They've never had a data breach. I talked to them. They've never had a data breach since opening in 2000. So the issues are, what caused a lot of the issues is the buyback fund. We used to pay the pawn shop when they had a piece of stolen property. We paid them. That went away. That caused a lot of heartache because now we take that piece of property. But part of that is we can't. If you get your radio stolen and I recover it, I can't give it back to you. If it was in a pawn shop, the pawn shop has a right to have a court hearing, so they can file. To have a court hearing, you have to go, they have to go, and it's up to a judge to decide who gets that piece of property back. That is the procedure that's set in place. They all know that now, and it works very well.
Good. That's really what I wanted to hear. I figured the transition was going to be a little funky because it was different, but I was excited to see us going to this process. I'm glad it's working. Thanks for the report.
Dean?
Just curious, I remember when I first came on the council, this is the hot button, basically, and it seemed to me that there was alluded to that we'd save staff hours. Has this been a savings for manning and number of hours worked, detective work, that type of thing? Have you realized that?
Yes, because now we don't, as I said before, we don't touch the pawn tickets. Before, we had to drive to the pawn shops. I was a property crimes detective many years ago, and I had 4, so I drove all around town to collect my tickets, and if I had 500 for the week, I had to sit and manually code each one. And if I couldn't read it, then I had to call them saying, I don't know what this is, can you please? We don't do any of that because now it's electronic. It all goes in there. We put our hits in there. We can put in what's stolen and just wait, and then it'll email us or it'll pop up so when you take all of them man hours and records had to manually enter every one of them in. To me, the cost savings is
Savings
great.
is significant then. Okay, thank you.
Greg, please.
Just checking on I know we were going to review the pawn shop ordinance. Is this meant to be that review?
We'd asked for a report
Just
from
a-
the police as far as
Leads
how it's
online only?
transitioning, not reviewing the ordinance per se. We just wanted to know what the interaction was
I
like.
thought we were going to review the ordinance itself, maybe at a different time, maybe in a committee or something, but I just hope that this isn't that review because there's a lot more to it than just Leads Online. Okay, good. The other question really is, right, I remember the big hot topic was privacy, identity theft or something. Have you had any complaints or anybody file any lawsuits or anything against you guys for giving information that was somehow stolen or used?
none, and Leads Online has had none either.
Okay.
They've never been sued for
Very good.
data
Thank you.
breach.
Again, Counselor Jamison, this was just an intent for a review of where we're at. I think we'd asked the police at the time that we'd worked on it to give us a review down the road, 6 months or so, and that's what this was supposed to be. No intent to look at the ordinance at this time unless you want it to go before a committee. So, are there any other questions? Yes, Counselor Anderson, please.
Well, I'll just, Councilman Jamison, I do agree with you. We did say at the time when we finished off the ordinance that we would do a review of this. I think a review is probably going to happen, but I think this is a good start just to see what type of information we can get at this point in time. Thank you for being here, Terry. You said you had 2,400 looks into leads online, somewhere in that area?
12,000
12,000?
searches by the Sioux Falls
Okay.
Police Department.
With 400 hits?
Yes.
Okay. In those 400 hits, how many items were confiscated?
That's 400.
Is a hit a confiscation?
I'm calling that, yes.
Okay.
I don't know if that's confiscated or it was a stolen item. Again, we have sons that steal their, father's watch, and they don't want to do anything about it. We don't go take that watch. We direct the father to the pawn shop to resolve that if he doesn't want his son prosecuted for that. But it still comes up as a hit. We still found it. We put a hold on it until we can contact the victim and go, okay, this was your son who pawned it. I thought it was somebody else. I don't want anything done with that. Okay.
Well, then out of those 400 hits, how many of them actually started a legal process through the police department?
I do not know.
Okay. Do we know how many items were returned to the original owners or returned to the pawn shops?
I do not know that. I'd have to research every case to figure that out. And I would have to go through the court records. Keith Allenstein was supposed to be here. He's at court right now. He does all the paperwork. So if a pawn shop wants to contest that ownership, he files all the legal papers for the police department to set up that court hearing.
So how do we keep track of the items that we confiscate? Does the police department keep track of those, or?
Yep. When we confiscate it, it goes down to the police department, gets turned in as evidence. Once the court is through with that process, or the court, they'll send us a notice saying the case is done, you can release the property. At that time, we send a letter to a pawn shop and say, would you like a hearing in reference to this? And then we give them like 30 days or a set time to file the paperwork necessary to start the court proceedings for the ownership of that property. If that time passes where they didn't file for it, or they respond to us and say, you know what, I got restitution for it, just give it back to the owner, then we do a release to the owner.
Do we know how many court hearings we've had? How many items have been returned to pawn shops?
I do not know that, sir.
I guess it's really difficult if, we're getting in general numbers and then we're not, is there a way of being able to get that information, of seeing how many items have been processed through the police department? Because that was one of the issues that we had when we first started this whole thing. And that was one of the things I thought that we made very clear, was that when we reviewed these, that we wanted to see some numbers.
Okay, I can do that. It'll take some time to do that because I'll have to go through every case.
I was going to recommend, Counselor Anderson, if I might, Jim, you might want to just kind of take and follow through. Counselor Anderson has asked a number of questions concerning this. You might want to just send off, working with the lieutenant, maybe put together a list of some of that information that you could get for us, if you would, please, to give us some of those more specifics, I think. I think if we could get that and just have that emailed out to the council, that's a good start, Counselor Jamison, to what you'd like to be able to do, I believe.
Well, then the next step would be, I think we'll take a look at the calendar for public services, because this is where it all started.
That's fine.
And we'll put it on the calendar for public services to take a look at.
Okay. Councilor Jameson, please.
I was just going to add a note to, I did have a conversation recently with a phone provider who sells or buys used phones. And one of the things they've learned is as soon as somebody brings in a phone and wants to sell it and they have to show their driver's license, they've figured out that if the guy says, well, maybe let me think about it, it's probably a stolen phone. And anytime they have to give up that personal information, they're reluctant to do it. The old days, it was just, $50, $100, and they just move along. But now when they've got to turn in their personal information, it kind of, and they learn from that and they go, okay, well, I can't do that. What I heard was the big new deal now is they ship it to like Germany or some crazy place, and they sell these phones to them, and then over there they can unlock it or break it or reprogram it or something. But that's the new market. It isn't trading it in at the pawn shop and getting $100. It's actually shipping it someplace. So anyway, I think it is making an impact. It just might be hard to track too.
Great, thank you.
Last one question,
Please, Kenny.
please. Terry, when we started all of this and we were looking at the leads online, it was funded by a federal grant. Where is it? Is it still being funded by that grant, or have we changed funding?
I do not know. I can get you that question.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kenny. Anything else for the lieutenant at this time? Lieutenant, thank you very much. I'll ask you to work with Jim David, and maybe we can get some answers to some of those questions, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Second presentation is our March financial report by Tracy Turbeck. Welcome, Tracy.
Good afternoon. Good to be here. As you recall, I was here last month with the 2013 year-end report and gave a report on the financial results for the last fiscal year. This report today will cover the first quarter of 2014 as of the end of March. And then going forward, we'll be back in a routine of regular monthly visits to kind of review the local economy and talk a little bit about how the city's progressing from a financial standpoint every month. So today we'll go through some of the economic indicators, unemployment here locally in the Sioux Falls MSA in February, which is the most recent information. I think we'll get probably have March's data by the end of the week. But the February unemployment rate here locally was 3.9%. That's excuse me, about a half a percentage point below where it was a year ago. It was at 4.4% in 2013 and 4.8% in 2012, February of 2012. We've got about just under 1,000 more people working in February than we did the prior year in February. So those are some just some numbers for you. Building permit values. We're off to another very good start in terms of the construction activity in Sioux Falls. We're not quite setting the pace that we did last year. That was just a really remarkable year in terms of the construction activity and the permits that were issued last year. But the first quarter of 2014 is starting out very strong. We're over $100 million worth of construction permitted through the end of March. It's about $109 million. And that's, if we go back to 2000, which was a pretty good year in its own, but we're running about 77% of 2012. So at this point in 2012, we're not nearly as well off in terms of the construction activity. And the graphic kind of shows you side by side for those 3 years just how things are running. I don't think it's probably realistic to think that we will keep the pace throughout the full year like we did last year to hit those kind of numbers, but we've got a lot of year left to go yet, and time will tell, I guess, just how fast-paced the construction business is in Sioux Falls here this year. Moving on to sales tax revenues, this is our rolling 12-month growth rate chart that covers a 24-month period of time, ending just last month at the end of March. You can see that for the last 12 months, our general sales taxes have been growing at a rate of 7.5%. That's backed off a little bit from the 8% rate that we're growing for the calendar year 2013. So we've seen that that rate of growth slow down a little bit. The first quarter of 2014 has been a little bit sluggish, I guess I would call it. But it would be premature, I think, to say 3 months make a trend. So we will continue to watch that and see if it really is a slowing trend, or if it has more to do with the really unpleasant weather that we had the first quarter of this year. So we're looking forward, now that the weather is getting a little nicer, just to see how well our retail sales respond to that. Entertainment tax revenues, again, a rolling 12-month growth chart shows that we've been growing pretty steadily for the last year, right between 5.5%, 6%, right in there. For the last 12 months, we've been growing at 5.8%. And that's, as I say, that's pretty steady. We aren't seeing a lot of ups and downs in that. So that's certainly a very healthy rate of growth in our entertainment tax revenues. Looking now at the general fund for the first quarter of the 2014 budget year, the revenues are right on track with past years and with our budget. Through the first quarter of the year, we've received or booked about $20.6 million in general fund revenues. That represents about 15% of the budgeted revenue, and that's right in line with where we were at this point a year ago relative to the budgeted revenues. For the general fund expenses, we've incurred expenses of about $32.4 million for the first quarter of the year. That represents about 23% of our general fund budget for the first quarter, which is right on track with where we typically have been for the first 3 months of the year. And so that's well within our expectations for the general fund expenditures. So nothing really we're not seeing anything really out of the ordinary to this point, which is always a good thing. Before I finish my remarks, I did just want to bring one point to your attention. You might recall that fairly recently the internal audit did a review of the city's investment policy, and they did have a couple of recommendations. So I just wanted to make you aware that we'll be bringing a revised investment policy to the council here in the near future. It was just kind of an update, cleaning up some outdated references to statutes that had changed, some of those things. So that will be, we're going to try to get that scheduled to get before you next month with an updated policy that we use to kind of guide us in our investment practices in the finance office. So with that, concludes my remarks, and I'll be happy to try to answer any questions you folks have today.
Questions for Tracy? Councilor Staggers?
Yes, I have a question about today being Earth Day. We're not charging for the use of the bus system. Are we charging for paratransit today?
I guess I don't know the answer to that.
Oh, okay. Any idea how much money we're giving up today by having free rides?
I don't know the answer to that either.
Okay.
I think the concept, of course, is like a lot of retail businesses or any other type of business where they try to incentivize people to at least try the product or try the service with the idea that they will appreciate it, like it, realize it's convenient, and eventually grow the use of that transit system. So my hope would be that if that's successful, that it's not going to cost us anything, and in fact, it would generate more business for the transit system in the future and help that budget.
Okay.
But time will tell. We'll see. I think it's nice to see that they're being a little bit creative and trying to find new ways to get people interested in riding the transit system.
Yeah, because I was just wondering, as a technical issue, the city council approves the rate increases, and we didn't have any involvement in this at all.
I believe you're right. The council was not involved in the Earth Day decision.
Councilor Anderson, please.
I guess, Councilman Staggers, I as a statement, I don't understand why you're asking Director Turbach when our contract is with the Transit Authority, and that they would make those decisions similar to what we do with the Convention Center, the Pavilion, we're not involved with those decisions that they make administratively. I think if you want answers to those questions, we should be asking the transit management people or the PTAB committee. I think that's the best route to get those answers.
Yeah, but when it comes to the convention center, event center, the costs for all of that, I don't think we have any ordinance that says we're going to determine the rates, but here we do. You know what the rates for the paratransit's going to be and the rates for the bus service.
But the management is given to an outside of the administration management company, and it would be their decision on free days and that, not.
Oh, is that right? I guess I didn't know that at all.
I was just going to suggest that those questions be directed in that direction, and I think you'll get answers.
Right. Are there any other questions for Tracy? We're good, Tracy. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I just want to remind the council that at 5 o'clock, we are going to have a joint meeting with Minnehaha County. There are several items on the agenda that we will be touching on this evening. I would also like to ask the council at this time if there's any other questions or to come before the chair. There being none, meeting adjourned.